Thank you for joining us back here on Just Conspiracy, where we just wish to conspire to bring heaven down to earth. And if you're not conspiring to bring heaven down to earth, you're conspiring to bring hell up here. But right now, we're conspiring to teach you, the common public, that the courts are corrupt, and it is beyond anything that they can fix themselves, and if we don't get the general public involved, then nobody's gonna have rights because we're already there. Where people are getting arrested for asking if they're a slave, and Joni can't go into a court to protect her interest in private trust. Anyways, if you haven't been watching the stories, I highly encourage you to go back and watch the past couple of episodes. That way, kind of stay up to date. And plus, it will help with the algorithm, and I'm trying to monetize the YouTube channel, and it would really help me out. It'll just take you a couple of minutes. Now, where we left off last time was Joni was in court on the 9th verifying about all this trust fraud that Josephine had done, and then the next day, the 10th, they locked Joni up right off the bat, immediately, because what she had to say was just that scary, and that's why we don't live in a civil society anymore. I'm not going to tell you the rest of the last video because it kind of be a spoiler for this video, but in the last video, we went over Josephine's testimony. In this video, we're going to go over Henry Ramo's testimony and listen to it. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to play what happened at the beginning of court after they took Joni away from Baba.
I want to go with her.
No, sir. You can't do that.
Then don't do that to her.
She did it to herself.
She did not. She did it as my daughter.
Sit
My flesh and blood.
down. Sit down. Let the record reflect that I spent 2 days looking over the file.
He has spent 2 days looking over the file, 2 days, but apparently he can't read any of it because what he decided to do makes absolutely no sense when you've looked over the file and verified for yourself all the trust fraud that Josephine's been committing, with all the documents that Joni and Baba gave him.
My daughter is
You're
my
not.
blood here. I need her. She's been with me all this time.
She's not an attorney. I explained that to her at length the other day.
Who needs an attorney? I need God.
What Henry is saying there is, I don't wish for somebody to charge me to turn me over to your gods, the states and the state statutes. I require the law of our sovereign creator in here. He doesn't get to find any. It's really sad. And what's going to happen coming up is I'm going to start playing right where it was left off in the last video. So if you don't understand what's going on, you should go check out the last video. I'll link it up here somewhere. But Josephine testified. Henry got to start asking her questions. I cut it off in the last video. Henry is still asking her questions. Keep in mind, this is a 91-year-old man trying to do the best that he can when he had his trusted person, the most trusted person he has in the world, his daughter, one of the children who have been taking care of him for the past 10 years, for the past decade, ripped away from him because the courts didn't want her putting facts upon the record of the court because she already laid them down the day before. Just keep that in mind. They already knew what Joni was going to say. She was going to say that Josephine committed trust fraud, and she was going to have all the documents to prove it, and they just couldn't let that be on the record, so they had to beat her up and throw her in a cage. And now, Henry has to fend for himself at court.
Over. Was signing the checks. Constantly. That he signed the check for. What did he sign the checks for?
Objection, relevance.
Michael Probert was a trustee who was in charge of signing the checks. One of the things that he had to do was sign checks for a 295 Thomas Road Real Estate Enterprises Trust to keep that house from going into foreclosure, which he did, and now they're trying to blame Baba for it so that Josephine can rob him for the rest of his money.
What did he sign the checks for?
Objection, relevance.
That's a question, correct?
Yes.
I'll let it.
What did he sign the checks for?
Well, you wrote the checks out and all his duty was to sign it and look at it and see what it was for. That's all his duty was, to make sure that it was for that particular reason you wanted it.
No, those checks was for what, expenses, mortgage?
I don't know
Water?
if you took care of it.
You have all the bills.
All my married life,
You have a,
excuse me, all my married life, you have been taking care of the monies and the bills. I was busy taking care of my children and my grandchildren.
you're really extending this too far over your life. 60 years of marriage.
That's
My
right.
goodness.
Objection.
No,
Let's stay on point. Go ahead, if you have another question, ask it. Or if you want to testify at this time, you're entitled to do that too.
I could testify for the question.
If you want to ask her questions, you may, you're also allowed to, counter whatever she says by your testimony. You can take,
Oh, I could do that, then yes, okay. So Michael Probert signed all the checks.
wait a minute,
Oh,
to be sworn in. Well,
I have no redirections.
come on down if you will.
Now they're getting Josephine off the stand, and Henry doesn't understand what's going on. That's pretty clear. He was trying to answer Josephine's lies, like as he's asking the questions, but you can't really do that in their BS administrative proceeding. You can do that if you're a man or a woman in court. You can call somebody right out as a liar, and you can say what actually happened. But you can't do that with an attorney. An attorney can't do that for you because an attorney's voice isn't on the record. Only a man or a woman's voice testifying is on the record. And Henry's going to let you know how you know he was testifying. And if you saw the video with Joni, she says everything she's saying is under the penalty of perjury. That means it's testimony. It should appear on the facts of the case for that court of record, but I'm sure it doesn't because they don't play fair and they got no law down there. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done this because the facts would have been different. That's kind of why they beat her up and threw her in a cage.
I have to be sworn in.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And place your left hand on the Bible here. Oh, sorry. Okay, Mr. Raymond, just put your left hand on the Bible there.
See, he doesn't know what's going on. He's just kind of fumbling around. That's why they have to tell him what to do a couple of times.
My heart and my hands are clean. I pray to God. I'm going to tell the truth, nothing but the truth to help me God.
That's good enough.
See, that's why he doesn't have to swear in. He doesn't put his hand on the Bible. He says, I pray. I don't swear. He says, I pray to God. I'm going to tell the truth. The whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help me God. Because he's following the Abrahamic law. Let your yea mean nay, yea, and your nay mean nay. See, when you get up and you swear to God, which he told you not to do, it's not lawful. That's not how the law works. They got you. They tricked you into the devil's work.
That's good enough.
See, Fritz Mercer says that's good enough.
I don't know what kind of Bible it is. I go for King James. I'm a Gideon. I've been giving those Bibles out for 40 years.
Mr. Raymond, if you would state your full name.
I can't see it, but I can't see it.
Just state the microphone, just state your full name.
Henry Ramo.
Okay. Well, what would you like to say about all this, Mr. Williams?
I want to say that Michael Probert signed all the checks. I paid the bills that came in to pay for Michael Probert. But when it came time, we had a problem with the mortgage. I went to his house 3 times. I went to his house 3 times to get the checks back so I could pay the mortgage. And he said, Josephine has the checks. And I gave it to her. Whether he lied on that, I don't know. But 3 times. The third time, he said, I'll call the police on you if you don't go. And I have 2 of my sons that witnessed it. That was the 3rd time. So, consequently, I could not pay the mortgage. Of course, Michael had the checkbook. He was signing all the checks. I never had any checks. The checks were only signed at the end of the month when the bills came in, and I stacked them up and made the checks out to pay the bills, to satisfy the bills. Now, another question.
Okay, what he's saying is Michael Probert, one of the people, and actually the only individual who actually answered Henry's lawsuit back in 2013. And when he answered, he said he was handing over the checkbook to Josephine's attorney, and Josephine's attorney signs receiving the checkbook on Josephine's behalf, not on the trust behalf, which is what Michael Probert was handing it over as, because he was a trustee who signed all of the checks. It was his responsibility to sign the checks to pay off the mortgage that they're trying to say Henry threw away, that he got rid of. And remember, we showed the document yesterday where Josephine's attorney signed for receipt of the checkbook.
That is what I remember about the question that was asked. At moment, thinking, April 2nd, I went to physical therapy, and I was gone from the morning. I left in the morning. Well, I will tell you about the night before when she called the police that I did nothing to her. And then, you know, she called the police and tried to push me down the stairs. And she usually bumps me with her body. And then I said, I'll call the police. And she said, oh, that's a good idea. I'll call the police. Police came, didn't find us with any argument or anything. But the next day, I went to PT. I left I did not sleep with her that night. I told the police officer, I'll sleep in the other room. So this way there won't be any dissension. So I left at 9 o'clock the next morning, April 2, 9 o'clock, came back, 1:30, 2 o'clock, she robbed my house. Assets were gone from the trust, 2 plastic containers that had jewelry and money changed in there. She also had that were in the pantry this high with envelopes with our money in it that we was more or less, I'd say, stashing away. And I had 2 compartments, one over her dressing room and one over my closet. One over my closet that I had stored. All I had to do was put take off the fascia board on both of those. And we had a lot of jewelry, money, and expensive things, watches, smartwatches, and things of that nature. And I can't reiterate at present time what they were, but they were plentiful. And I want to know why Josephine confiscated all those things, left the house. When I came home at about 1:30, I didn't see any furniture. Pardon me, back up. I did not see any clothes in her closet. I looked under the bed, and the bed did not have those 2 drawers, pull-out drawers, in plastic containers. Oh gosh, a whole bunch of things. Now, if you would give me about a day to think about these things, I would reiterate everything that you did do.
I think you did pretty good. If you gave me about a day to think about this stuff, I could have a whole list and a lot of details ready for you. Or if you just brought my daughter back in here to ask me some questions, I could tell you really, really well if you just had her ask me some questions, because she would know what kind of questions to ask. Or if you just got one of my sons out in the crowd there, they're also a beneficiary. They also have trust in the trust. They have interest in the trust that I created. This affects them too, because all of the personal property in the trust, all of the loose cash, all the gold, all the silver, all the jewelry, all the diamonds, they were squirreled around in 2 little hiding spots. And I came home on April 2nd and they were all gone. Everything was emptied out. Everything. And he did a pretty good job remembering that stuff that happened 9, almost 10 years ago. But still, look at how much he kind of struggles, and then listen to Josephine tell her lie about dealing with the bank all those years ago.
What happened with that piece of property?
It went into foreclosure because Mr. Ramo did not pay the bank.
Okay.
And I got upset because, can I reiterate?
Okay.
Because I received a letter from the bank stating that it was going into foreclosure. So there was a phone number and everything, all that was there. And so I called up and I said, how can you do that to me? I said, I don't have that property. And he said to me, I can't talk to you. Your signature is not on the note and Mr. Ramo owes it. I said, yeah, but I own the property. So how can you do that? And he says, well, we can't, because he took a note, you're married to him. And everybody who's married to another person, they're liable for it.
This is why I don't believe her. She does not sound credible to me. I think that he did a really, really good job, and he's like, I'm sorry, I could do better if you just gave me like a day's notice where I could actually look at this stuff. But I thought Joni was going to be able to talk with you about this stuff and ask me questions. We had it all planned out. That's why we gave you notice that I can't hear. I can't really see. That Joni was going to take care of the interest of the trust. But I guess they couldn't let her do that. They couldn't let them get rights or law or justice. Just remember, this man's 91 years old. There's a reason they take judicial officers off the bench at like 70 or 75 in North Carolina. It's because you're not thinking the same when you're past 70 or 75 as you were when you were younger.
She took all those things out, and she gave me a 50B. She wanted to put me in a hospital for several days. And we went to the magistrate, and the magistrate said, my daughter Joni, who was helping me, went to the magistrate and said, no, I'm not going to file this. And she closed the case, so to speak, after my wife left, and she had never come back in my presence since that time, but she'd been in the house several times stealing any properties that she could take. I could go on and on, Judge, but gosh, give me a chance to think about all of this. And for 9 years, I've been waiting, and we've had a couple of attorneys that were inept. They were inept. I'll tell you, because I asked the attorneys that we had, I want certain things done so I can get my property back. They never went through. I asked another attorney, I said, let's go and get my promissory note so that it could be, I want the bank to show me a promissory note and the deed of trust, both of those, because I had filed a QWR to the bank and asked for it. I sent out one notice.
Okay, I just cut it off because what Henry goes into is because he's confused and he doesn't know what's going on. And he did some type of sovereign citizen nonsense that's a lot like the direct treasury account where, you know, you can just write off this or write off that. He didn't know what else to do. If you watched the last video, he was trying to get rid of the house to where they could actually save some of the assets. They could save something from it. And because Josephine wouldn't agree to anything, it all got foreclosed on, and then Josephine stole the rest of the property and sold it, which makes it criminal fraud. But the courts don't care about criminal fraud, especially when they're helping you commit the criminal fraud. Anyways, so I kind of skipped over a couple of minutes. There were some things that he said that were really good, but for the sake of time, try and keep these short for y'all. I just skipped over about 2, maybe 3 minutes. And 2 of those minutes were actually pretty good, or about 1.5 minutes, and the other part was just, he was confused, obviously. But here's what he does next.
I want to ask her, Josephine, why did you leave the house and take all those,
Well, this is not the time you ask her questions.
yeah. Would that be all right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Josephine, Coca, why did you leave the house?
Mr. Ramo, you can't ask her questions at this time.
I can. What can I?
The judicial officer tells Henry, this is not the time to ask her questions. Henry says, would that be okay? The judicial officer clearly says no. Fritz Mercer clearly says no, that's not okay. Henry, because he can't hear, even though he is sitting right next to the judicial officer, right next to him up on the witness stand, he starts asking Josephine questions. Because he put in a notice. I can't hear so well. I can't see so well. Which is why Joni's going to handle this for me. But that's okay because she has a full power of attorney because Josephine robbed us of every single penny we have and we don't have the money to pay an attorney. So if you think that this is okay, you're all for the robber getting away because they have the money to buy the legal advice to go rob more people. That just doesn't make any sense.
Mr. Ramos, you can't ask her questions at this time.
I can. What can I?
You cannot.
What can I ask you?
I don't think it's relevant to the proceedings anyway.
Why not? It's what you did.
I don't think it's relevant to the proceedings that you ask the criminal over there why they did their crimes. And besides the fact I don't think it's relevant to the proceedings, she has the right to remain silent because what she did was criminal. Criminal.
Why not? It's what you did.
May or may not have been exactly what she did. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the division of property here.
We're talking about the real property here. Yes, we're talking about the real property that Josephine stole. You're just not willing to get that through your thick skull, Fritz Mercer. And you got all these people out here in society believing you are God because you wear a black dress to work every day. And if y'all actually think that he's God, then go ahead and hand the government all of your property. Because I'm going to tell you, here's how it's going to go. If you don't have rights without an attorney, then the next financial crash, whenever it happens, and it's when it happens, not if it happens, if they just start raising the price of living, which they're already doing, and nobody can afford anything because they spend everything they get on food and trying to live, when they start coming for your house, you're not going to have any money, you're not going to have any rights, and the bank will have plenty of lawyers. Think about that. If you don't have rights without an attorney, you don't have rights.
Do you have any questions?
No, sir. No, sir.
He's not even going to ask him a question. The opposing attorney has no questions to ask him. He's like, whatever he would say would not be good. And everybody in the courtroom knows that Josephine's lying. Her attorney, who I believe helped prep her on the lie, the judicial officer, who I believe got with the attorney and came up with it behind closed doors. Remember Abe saying, I'm the only one kind of on your side?
Closest thing to someone on your side, and if you want to act like...
Which leads me to believe everybody else is conspiring against them. Everybody knows that what's going on in this courtroom right now is patently false, because everybody else who showed up because they wish to see Josephine get held accountable for what she's done. And Joni had like 12 people there. That's a jury. If you could ever tell them about it.
Mr. Ramo, come on down. Mr. Bradley, give me an order the attorney up in New York.
I object to that right now.
Yes, sir, I'll let you object.
Wholeheartedly. I reject, she's not getting a penny unless we discuss what's going on. Excuse me. I need my daughter to tell me a little bit more, because she has some of the documents that she has, preparation, from the attorneys.
Get in touch with the attorney in New York. That money should be transferred to his trust account, your trust account. Make an inland distribution after your client hold the other half to see what's going to come about. I don't know that I'll be the one to hear the rest of the evidence.
I object. I want the record to know and object.
That's it. What do you think? Do you think that's trust fraud to you? You think that's trust fraud, sending a false instrument that looks like a court order across state lines up to the state of New York, telling them to send down a lot of money from a trust account that they couldn't get for the past 9 years? You think it was really just that easy? Let us know. Comment down below. Look, we don't have rights in courts right now, but it's not as bad as it could be. Okay? But I can tell you this right now. This problem that's going on in the courts with us not having rights, it's kind of like a water leak in your house. If you don't pay any attention to it, if you just ignore it, it has a habit of growing exponentially quickly without you looking. Even though it's going to be pretty difficult to stop the courts right now, it's going to be way easier to stop them today than it will be a year from now. And they've already told you by 2030, you'll own nothing and be happy. How do you think they could do that without getting rid of the law? Without getting rid of your rights? How do you think they could take all of the private property away from most of the people on the planet if they cannot dispense with their natural rights in law? Comment about that. I'd really love to hear about it. It'd give us something really good to talk about. Anyways, we're kind of doing a series of these, so hopefully you like it, you share, you subscribe. Hopefully people start getting friends and families to watch stuff like this, and then talking about the problems and talking about how we could solve them. I have some ideas. You can go back and look at the videos I was making around the end of 2020 and beginning of 2021. It goes through a lot of ideas about how to vote, how the legislature should work, how courts are supposed to work, what grand juries are actually for. There's a lot of information in there. Anyways, I hope this gave you a new view on Henry Ramo's perspective. And the fact that Josephine stole everything from him and his family. And they can't get a court of law. They can't get rights. They can't have their rights upheld. And if you think that's okay, then you believe in doing wrong as long as somebody's getting paid for it. Don't try and hide it any other way. If you think what Josephine is doing is okay, then you believe it's okay for the robber to get away with robbing the bank because they own it and because they have better lawyers. That's how the bank got away with robbing society back in 2008. And if you agree with that, then great. You're just one of the individuals conspiring to bring hell up here to earth. But here at Just Conspiracy, we're conspiring trying to bring heaven down to earth. And in heaven, man and woman has rights. You and I have rights. And the banks are the dead fictional entities that we don't care what happens to them. Just a point of view. One world, love, peace.
So we accuse JoJo, which is Josephine Ramo, and the colluders in collusion with malice, intent, deceit, forethought, and with a plan. He has a trust. He has a contract between him and Josephine and the trustees. There's no equitable distribution.
Not for trust,
No. And so they kept trying to pull us into equitable distribution. I can tell you the only thing that could be equitable distribution is Josephine is not giving Dad half the amount of money for a car and some other items. Everything else is in trust property. That is a contract, private contract between the two of them and the trustees. And then they went to this courthouse, to the Register of Deeds, took out 2 properties, forged, and they colluded, and through fraud, they took the property out of the name of the trust and sold. They sold the property.
sold my property, yes.